Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our new Shadows of the Galaxy New Mechanics live stream. I'm super excited to be joining you all as we dive into some of the mechanics we've already talked about briefly. We might be showing a couple new cards, as well as getting to the third mechanic, Smuggle, which I saw some people mistyping as Snuggle. It is not Snuggle, it is Smuggle. I'm joined today by two lovely gentlemen who you all should recognize by this point, but we've got the wonderful senior game designer Jeremy Zwern here to reveal some new cards and talk about all that, and the wonderful game designer and rules admiral Ryan Serrano to walk us through what these mechanics are, what you can expect to see with them, and get into that a little more in depth. And so we're going to go through these in order today. Let's start with the bounty mechanic, I think, is where we should start. We've talked about it a little bit briefly, but why don't you walk everybody who maybe hasn't seen anything through what bounty is?
Sure, just diving right in then.
Yeah, let's just dive right in.
Let's just dive right in. Let's do it. People are here. So bounty is one of our new keywords for set 2. And basically what bounty is it's some effect, some ability that your opponent gets, not you. So it's on your cards, but your opponent gets to resolve it. So when your card that has a bounty on it is either captured or defeated, then an opponent gets to claim that bounty, collect that bounty, and then execute the text. So that can be from a card that you might play on an opponent's unit. So I might say, oh, I want this unit to have this particular bounty, set up the bounty, and then I go defeat that unit so that I get to collect the bounty. Or it might be a card that comes with a bounty on it.
Very cool. Makes sense. Cool. So
pretty straightforward.
We've shown some cards that have to deal with bounties already. I believe we've shown one. But why don't we throw up a new one for us?
New card.
JZ can walk us through it.
Yeah, so far we've seen bounties that are upgrades. You play an upgrade on enemy units. It grants a bounty. Here's some of the difference. Here's a unit that has a built-in bounty. It's a Cartel Turncoat. It's only one cost for a 2/3 space unit, so very efficient. In set 1 we have the X-Wing. It's a 2/3 space unit for 2 costs. So this one's half the cost, but It's got the built-in bounty, draw a card. So when the unit's defeated or captured, your opponent will get to draw a card. But it's quite powerful since, you can play 2 of these on turn 1 instead of a single X-Wing. Now you get 2 of them. So
Really powerful.
Imagine doing that and then following that up turn 2 with like a red 3. It can be a pretty aggressive, fast start to the game and all in space too. So a lot of decks, more focused on ground, so that can be tough for some decks to handle, quick onslaught in space like that. But yeah, it's a very simple bounty with a unit. We'll have a cycle of those in set 2. Common, very simple bounty. We'll have a lot more cool, exciting ones with more, different, unique bounties built in. One of my personal favorites, I believe, we'll reveal next week. So
yeah,
really looking forward to that one.
That's a great one.
It's really fun.
Very
thematic. It feels cool. It's a really cool card. So I'm looking forward to revealing that. We were going to reveal it today, but we already had big plans.
I should also clarify that with bounty, I know some of y'all are big fans of Twin Suns, like I am. And bounty in Twin Suns works slightly differently, where when a bounty is on a unit, whichever player is responsible for defeating or capturing that unit is who gets to claim the bounty. So for example, if the 3 of us were playing a Twin Suns game, I could maybe play a bounty on Xander's unit to incentivize Jeremy to defeat Xander's unit instead of coming after me. Because then he'd get a bounty, which creates a really fun dynamic energy there in Twin Suns.
That's really cool. So what happens if I defeat my own unit, though?
Oh yeah, so bounties they're inescapable. If you end up defeating, you can't capture your own unit, but if you end up defeating your own unit, an opponent still collects the bounty. So if you're playing in a 1v1, your opponent still gets that bounty even if you defeat your own unit. But if you're playing in a Twin Suns game, you get to choose which opponent collects the bounty if you defeat your own unit.
Ooh, that's fun.
You choose me, right?
Yeah, I mean, depends. You already said you're going to take out my guy. I'd probably give it back to Ryan as a reward, It'll be perfect. So let's go ahead and move on to capture. So capture is the second one that we've revealed. We've revealed a couple things around it, but we want to go in a little more depth. So Ryan, what is capturing? Yeah,
so capture is not a keyword, but capture is a new type of ability, type of effect that we get in the game. With capture, I have to have a unit, and that unit will capture another unit. What that means is that you remove all the damage, all of the upgrades on that unit, and then it gets turned upside down, removed from play, and placed underneath the capturing unit, which is now guarding that unit. that unit is guarding that unit, and that captured unit is out of play until that unit leaves play for some reason, at which point it returns to play. So, for example, you could have some really awesome unit, Xander, and I don't want it on the board, and I might capture it with something else. And it creates a lot of fun thematic synergies as well. I can come and capture your, Ezra Bridger or something, and it could be in a fun way.
Yeah, that's really cool. And so we've got a card to go along with the capture mechanic, but it's a little bit different, right? It's not just a strictly capture card. This is actually the opposite.
Right. Here's an example of how to rescue a captured card. So it's a very simple unexpected escape. It's 1 cost, exhausted units. So it's fine ability itself, but it has an added bonus. So you get to rescue a card that's being guarded by that unit. So it's just an example of there's some cards in the game that can just rescue a card by itself instead of trying to defeat it or capture or try to get rid of the unit in different ways. So, and just nice, simple, thematic, easy card to show off. Just a easy way to rescue a card.
Yeah, I love that artwork too.
Yeah,
it's perfect for that exact name, Unexpected Escape.
Thematic.
It's really cool.
When you go back to Star Wars, you see there are a lot of people becoming captured and then being rescued. It's a trope that comes up a lot. In Star Wars, and it's great. There are a lot of fun ways it happens.
That's really cool. And so someone asked a question real quick that we'll jump to before we go on, which is, does the captured card leave play for interacting with Boba's trigger?
Yes, the captured card does officially leave play. It is out of play when it turns face down, and then it re-enters play when it comes face up.
Very cool. Awesome. So we've kind of gone over, the 2 mechanics we've already talked about. Everyone's here because we've teased out that we're going to talk about smuggling.
Well, they're here because they love you as a host, Xander. I believe.
Oh, shucks. And so let's get into the main event, which is showing off Smuggle, the other new keyword for this set. So Ryan, what is Smuggle?
Yeah, so I've seen some chatter. Some of us, on the design team, we watched the chatter online, and we see some chatter where people have talked about how, it's crazy that you're putting cards from your hand face down as resources. That's such an interesting design space. I wonder if they'll ever do anything with the cards that are in your resource zone. And the answer is yes, we will. We're going to do it right now in set 2. Smuggle is a keyword that is on some cards and means that you can play them from your resource zone. So a smuggle card will have a smuggle, it'll have a cost, and what that means is that you can pay that cost and surprisingly play that card directly from your resources into play. It is played like any other card, it just doesn't come from your hand. The card that you play from your resource row is then replaced with the top card of your deck, so you don't lose resources in order to smuggle cards into play. But it's fun because you can kind of plant a card early on and then wait a couple turns and then bring it into play, surprising your opponent by getting it in there.
That's incredible. So
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know that there's many members of the design team that this is one of their favorite mechanics here, and they aren't able to join us today, but everybody was like, oh God, when are we talking about smuggling so we can start talking about it in person? So it's really cool. And to demonstrate this, we've got more than a couple cards to show off.
Handful,
so
I think.
Let's start off with Vigilant Pursuit craft.
Yeah, so Smuggle is one of my favorite mechanics. It's one of the very first mechanics I designed for the game. I was always enamored by the resource row, kind of like there's clearly some things we could do here. So I think originally I called it like cache, just something simple. Just we tried it early on, like this is really cool. Let's kind of slush it off for the future. Once set 2 began to do a lot more design work, we have a Smuggler theme for set 2. This mechanic that lets you play cards from resource row, like that could maybe be rethemed as like a smuggle. That'd be kind of cool. It seemed very fitting and fun, so we felt that'd be natural to put in set 2, and we played this very well, so we liked it from day one, and it felt very thematic and very fun. So yeah, we were very pleased with where the mechanic came. We did some changes along the way, but in the end, we're very happy with how it turned out, and excited to get players to play with it now.
It's really cool. So that's one example of Smuggle there on that unit.
The Vigilant Pursuit craft, yeah. Very simple, basic. You can still play it normally for 5, or else you can smuggle it for 7. So usually smuggle costs will be a little bit in addition, 1 or 2, since you get essentially a free card with it.
Yeah.
It comes out of your resource row, but you replace it with the top card of your deck, so it's card advantage. But we'll have other smuggle costs that are different in the future.
Ooh, different smuggling costs. That's interesting. And so let's go on to our next card, which is Privateer Crew.
This is a little bit different one. Usually smuggle costs are like 1 or 2 more. This is a bit more. But it has a cool ability. When you smuggle it, you get to add 3 experience tokens to it. So the smuggle cost is 6 compared to 2 normal costs. be able to come into play as a 5/5 if you smuggle it. So it gives a nice flexibility.
Wow.
That's the one thing I love about Smuggle. It lets you kind of flush out your cost curve more. And you can count this as a 2-drop. It's not the best 2-drop, but if you need a 2-drop, there it is as a 2/2. But it also can count as a 5 or a 6-drop, since you can play it as Smuggle for 6. And it comes in play as a 5/5 that essentially draws you cards. So when you're building your deck, it's kind of cool to think that it can be like a 2-drop or a 6-drop. And when you're playing with it, it gives it more flexibility of, what do I need more, a 2-drop right now, or I want to save this for later for a 6-drop. One more thing I love about Smuggle is it makes resourcing much easier. It's one very challenging thing with somebody that's playing the game is you have to resource a card, and you want to keep all your cards. Like, what one do I put down? I like all of these. With Smuggle, if you have a Smuggle card, go ahead and put that down, because most likely you'll have a chance to play it later on, so it's a much easier decision.
Very cool.
Yeah, and the flexibility is also very nice and limited for this card in particular, but Smuggle in general.
Definitely.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was about to say, the flexibility of just being like, this card is fine, but I also have this way better 2-drop for this exact moment. It's like, well, this guy is perfect for later. Let's just slide that under there and not have to worry about it for a little bit, which just feels amazing.
Definitely.
So let's go on to another card we have, which is Timely Intervention.
So yeah, Smuggler cards, they don't have to be on just units or upgrades. Events can also be smuggled. So this is a nice solid card. You can give it a unit's ambush when we play it for 1. But then it gives you flexibility later on. You can resource this in your maybe opening hand, since you don't want to play this turn 1, so you can resource it for later and be able to smuggle it for 3 and still get card advantage. That's the only I love about Smuggle. You can really kind of reward playing a little bit longer game. And one fun thing about Smuggle is if you have no cards in hand, it's almost like you have maybe a second hand with Smuggle.
Yeah.
You can check your resources, see how many cards you have down there is almost like an additional hand. And if you have no cards in hand, sometimes your opponent thinks they have 100% information, but then you can kind of surprise them with a Smuggle card out of nowhere. It's a lot of times, it's like early in set 1 meta, it's kind of like, if your opponent has no cards in hand, you know what's available, 100% open information. But now with set 2, it changes things with Smuggle. You can have surprise cards out of nowhere.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that cards in hand question of like, I'm out of options. All these 5 resources are just going to waste. Bummer. Play something immediately.
Not anymore.
Yeah, that's that's cool. So we have one more card. This is the one I was most excited for us to show off today. I think we all were, to be fair.
I mean, it's exciting card.
Yeah, so let's show off the Hotshot DL44 Blaster.
Yeah, this is a good one. So you can play it normally for a +2/+0 for 1. It's fine. But the best part is you can smuggle it for 3. And the coolest thing is the smuggle cost is a different aspect compared to the normal cost.
Yeah.
So this is one thing where we'll have multiple cards that have a kind of off-color smuggle cost compared to normal aspect cost. And then you can sometimes get a bonus, like this card. When you smuggle it, you get to attack with the unit you attach it to right away, which is very powerful. So it's an additional combat trick that comes from your resource row.
That's cool.
And this one can stay in play. It's an upgrade, so if the unit sticks around, that upgrade gives +2/+0 for the rest of the game. So quite powerful card.
Yeah. The cool thing is that it works if you're just running, aggression in your deck. You can play this card normally. You don't need aggression though. You can have it in your deck even if you're just running cunning with no aggression and just plan to smuggle the card 100% of the time. But if you're running an aggression and cunning deck, you have the flexibility to decide to either play it normally or smuggle it. So you kind of, depending on how you want to use it in your deck, you got a bunch of different options.
So after Smuggle, it has the cost, the actual resource you have to pay, as well as the aspect that you need to have to play it as well.
Absolutely.
And so that answers the question of people asking why there was an aspect symbol. So the cost is all of those things together.
Yeah, costs include aspect symbols. So you might need to pay an aspect penalty if you're trying to smuggle a card that's not one that's provided by your leader in your base.
Yeah, so I could throw that Hotshot DL44 Blaster in my double aggression deck and then be like, I resourced it, but I still really need it in this exact moment, and you could pay that aspect tax in addition. It's going to be an expensive blaster.
It's a very expensive blaster.
But maybe that wins the game.
It's an option, yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely nice to have. I played my mono cunning deck, and it's like, I'll never play it normally because I want to smuggle it instead. And it's a very good card to smuggle, so it feels weird to have like that. It's kind of like you're splashing an aggression card in mono cunning, but since you can smuggle it for cunning, it's like, it makes sense.
That's cool. So we have a bunch of questions from the chat,
I imagine.
which makes sense, right? So let's go ahead and look through some of these. So our first one is, do smuggle cards enter exhausted?
Yes. So any card that enters play will always enter play exhausted unless it says otherwise. So a card that you smuggle in is smuggled in exhausted, and the card that comes off of your deck to replace it is also enters play exhausted as a resource.
All right. They also ask, does the card, when it has a smuggle aspect cost, does it still count the original aspect on that card as well?
No,
so
it is entirely the cost of what is printed next to smuggle, is the cost of playing that card, or of smuggling that card. Yeah.
So you do not have to worry about the rest of the cost and everything up in the top left corner
Yeah,
anymore. It's
not at
just
all.
what's next to smuggle, and that's how you smuggle it.
Yeah, exactly. As Jeremy was saying, in his mono yellow or mono cunning deck that doesn't run any aggression at all, he still runs Hot Shot Blaster, even though it's an aggression card, because he's only ever planning on smuggling it, so he only ever has to pay that cunning cost.
Makes sense. Cool. So someone also asked, can you exhaust a card as a resource to have it pay for itself?
Yes, you can.
That's cool.
That is factored into the fact that smuggle costs are slightly overcosted, is that the card is helping to pay for itself. So based on the timing windows of playing a card, you declare that you're going to play the card using smuggle. It's still in your resource zone, so you can exhaust it to help pay for its own cost, and then smuggle it into play. And then it's replaced as with an exhausted resource. So other than the extra cost to play the smuggle, you're not losing any tempo, and you're not losing any cards because you're always replacing that card from the top of your deck.
So in fact, you'd probably, tell people that they should pay for the card they're smuggling with itself.
Yeah, almost
to get their-
always.
yeah.
Yeah, almost always you want to do that because that card is about to leave and be replaced with an exhausted resource. So you don't want to have it leave as a ready resource and then get replaced by an exhausted resource, or you've lost a resource for the turn. But you always have the option to use it to pay for itself because it's always there when you're playing it. So, yeah.
Cool. Can you smuggle a exhausted resource?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. You can smuggle an exhausted resource into play. So it obviously couldn't pay for itself since it's exhausted, but you can still smuggle it into play. Cool. It's an active, it's an ability on the card regardless of its orientation.
Very cool. All right. We got some questions about captured. So do rescued cards go back into hand or into play once they are rescued?
Oh, great question. Yeah, I should have covered that. A card that is rescued either by the card unit guarding it being defeated or removed from play, or by an ability that rescues a card, will re-enter play in the arena that it's supposed to enter play. So it'll re-enter the ground arena and it comes back into play exhausted, because cards always enter play exhausted.
Makes sense. All right. We have one more, and we don't have to answer this if you all don't want to, but I'll throw it out there, which is, are there any cards without an aspect at the smuggle cost?
Oh, Jeremy?
I guess we don't need to answer that yet.
We don't have to answer that yet. All right.
You'll see all the variety of things that smuggle costs can be pretty soon.
Yeah, we've got a lot of really fun ones coming up. So if you are enjoying what Smuggle has to come, this is just a brief taste. We want to make sure everybody sees, some of the variety around what Smuggle does, but there's a lot more to come. There's so many other cards.
One cool thing about Smuggle is when you smuggle a card, you put the top card of your deck into play as a resource. If that card is Smuggle, then later on you can play that card as well. And you can maybe keep that train going.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Get the Smuggle train going, choo-choo.
So when I build my all smuggle deck, my oops all smuggling deck, it's just going to be cycling through, basically building me out a whole extra hand.
Build a whole deck of smuggle cards and you're guaranteed to do that, yeah.
Yeah, all right,
pretty
well, I've
good,
got
but-
game plans now for Shadows of the Galaxy. Cool. So I think that answers a lot of the questions that people had, but is there anything else that you all want to say about these mechanics or any teases you can drop for the audience here?
What can we tease?
Yeah, throw something out there,
The Smuggle is definitely the main mechanic of the sets. There's a lot of cards that deal with that. There's multiple leaders that play off Smuggle, so in time we'll get to see those cards, and you can build decks if you want, really based very highly on Smuggle, and they're a lot of fun to play. They're just really cool to have that, more options and to be able to surprise your opponent with a card out of nowhere. It's one of my favorite mechanics, and as we've seen that with a lot of playtesting, it will be, I think, a popular mechanic, and I can't wait to get players see all the cards and play with them themselves and have a ton of fun with it like we have.
It's going to be great. It's going to be so much fun. July can't come soon enough at this point.
Definitely.
I don't know if I'm allowed to tease this. I'll tease it anyway.
Yeah, let's see it.
If you're going to tease something about Smuggle, I think Bounty is super fascinating, so I really like Bounty. So I'll tease you on Bounty by saying that there are cards that can perhaps put multiple bounties out. or
Ooh.
repeatedly put bounties out. I'll say that. I won't say what kinds or how or any of that works, but I'll say that not every card is just one bounty.
I love that. That's very intriguing. Cool. So I think that wraps up a lot of the questions we had from the chat. Hopefully you all liked learning about Smuggle and hearing a little bit more about bounty and capture. Be sure to tune in next week as we go over some deck techs, I believe with Danny and John. We'll be back for that. But otherwise, stay tuned for our May live stream schedule, which will be coming out very soon as well. And thank you all for joining us. And the article is now live on the website, so if you are someone who wants to read more about these, you can see some of the same cards on there. But be sure to share that with friends and let them know all the cool things that are happening for Shadows of the Galaxy. All right. Thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.